Hello and welcome to Across the Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, where on each and every episode we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am your host, Ryan Doze, and on today's episode, you will be listening to part 3 of our Jason Aaron retrospective, where we dig back into Thor, God of Thunder, Volume 3, The Accursed. For this part of our retrospective, I'm going to be joined by Hayley, Hobbs, and Brian V. Klein from the Source Pages podcast. Be sure to go check them out when you have time after you've heard this part of our retrospective. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a great conversation, and I'm so glad that we get to share it with you today. Before we jump into that part of our episode today, I wanted to make you aware of something, dear listener. Across the Bifrost has got some exciting news that will be up on our social media this week. At the beginning of April, we are going to be changing some stuff up. We're not going to be changing Across the Bifrost. We're going to be adding to it. There's going to be some exciting news going up on our social media this week. So you're going to want to check us out on Instagram at Mighty Thor Podcast, and on Facebook, go look for our Across the Bifrost group. All the new exciting news will be up. The new news. Interesting. Of course, what isn't all news new? Well, maybe not. I don't know. But all of the information will be up there this week. Lots to look forward to in the future of the podcast. So you're going to want to go check that out. But be sure to go check it out after you've enjoyed this conversation with Brian and Hayley from Source Pages. Here we go. Part 3 of our Jason Aaron retrospective, The Accursed. Well, everybody, this is the third part of our Jason Aaron retrospective, and I'm really excited for this one. We're going to talk about the third volume of his run, the story called The Accursed. So we're going to get some Malekith action, some Dark Elves. It's going to be great, a great, good bit of fun. And for this, I've brought on two awesome guests that are a part of a podcast that I really enjoy, the Source Pages podcast. That's Brian V. Klein and Hayley Hobbs. How's it going tonight, guys?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited that we finally get to do this because we've been talking about, Brian and I have been exchanging messages for a long time, and I'm just so stoked to have you guys here.
Well, yeah, thanks for having us on. It's finally got the time to be able to do it and a good run of stuff to talk about too. So yeah, happy to be here.
Before we jump into the issues, I wanted to maybe one of you wanted to take a crack at this, just explaining what Source Pages is. And, if listeners want to check out your show, what you guys do, what your aim is with that show.
You want me to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay. Well, it started about May and June of last year. We were talking to Stranded Panda Network, which is what we are a part of, basically is the home of the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. And so a bunch of us there that are admins and just friends of the group that we, accumulated over time by, like, I met Hayley through the MCU cast, did a weekly on Wednesdays trivia for MCU stuff. And we just became friends, and we started talking about, what we had this Jason of an idea for talking about the Dune novel for when the movie came out. It's just like we were wanting to make it like a book club. And so we were spitballing, myself and Jason Scotty St. Clair, who's on the Animation Deliberation podcast that's on the network, who handles all like the action animated stuff, spitballing titles, this and that. And I was basically, because it was I was the one that basically was like spearheading it. And I talked to Hayley anyway, so I'm just throwing stuff back and forth with her. We came up with the name Source Pages because the moniker is Source Pages, a reading collective. So it's Spark. Let's reading spark your imagination. Yeah. Because it actually started off, it was going to be the Stranded Panda Reading Club, but we didn't want to, that's sort of, in a nutshell type thing, the Stranded Panda. So we got rid of that so that we, went out and put a call out, and we got the name Source Pages. And then I'm going over stuff with Hayley. And then finally I'm just like, you want to do this with me? And then our first episode was for comics, the Black Widow, because the movie was coming out. And basically what it was is, we take comics or novels that are continuations, primers, or what's the other one?
Source material.
Source material. So,
Okay.
for like the Hawkeye show, we did the run of Matt Fraction, which they used a
Yes.
lot of that in there. And the Eternals run, we did the Neil Gaiman stuff. They pulled a lot from that. So then that's basically what it is that we're reading the stuff and we're talking about it. So because for all the stuff on our network, there was nothing that covered the comics on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast network. And so we're like, we get to read comics and talk about it. And we've done like the novel thing sort of, which was funny, was that Dune was the first thing that we were going to do. We did what was called a novel concept, where myself and Jay Scotty had read it. We talked about the first book and a half of the novel, because the Dune novel is broken into 3 books.
Okay.
And it was just to explain to Hayley, because she didn't read it. We were basically explaining the story to her so she could understand it more. And it was just us recapping it, so someone that hadn't read it knows the bigger part of the story. And a lot of people actually said that after they listened to it, it made watching the movie a little bit less confusing, because we explained a lot of the deeper stuff with the Bene Gesserit and all the Muad'Dib stuff, and just all the. Plus, it's just fun to. I read a lot. I quote unquote read a lot of novels. I listen to them on Audible because I cycle a lot, and I just have a lot of headphone time during the day.
Same here, man.
And so that's where we listen to podcasts, listen to the Audible stuff, and then from there, now it's just become a weekly thing that we put out. We just finished the Darth Vader 2015 run that helped introduce a character, Dr. Aphra, who all signs are pointing she's going to be getting a bit more involved with the Disney Plus stuff.
Yeah.
One of the characters that Kieran Gillen introduced when he created Dr. Aphra was Black Chrysanthemum, and he showed up in Book of Boba Fett. So we're like, oh my God, this is something that Kieran Gillen. Okay, boom, they're going to do something with Aphra. And they also have, if you guys don't do anything, you read the run, because there is 000 and BT1, which are assassin protocol droids, and Astro Rec droids.
Blastomech.
Blastomech instead of Astromech.
That's awesome.
Because it's like an R2D2 and a C3PO, but they love killing and torturing.
Their counterparts.
They've gone to the dark side.
Pretty much. It's their programming, and it's fun. But like I've said a bunch of times, my main thing is that I've been a Star Wars fan. I saw the original Star Wars movie in the theaters on my 4th birthday. And so Star Wars is like my wheelhouse. Yeah. But so is Marvel. So is Tolkien. I'm 100% just fully invested in a lot of stuff. Doctor Who's another one that I love. And so obviously you can tell from the fact that I've like hijacked this whole thing, I like to talk to. So
what I've noticed is, so BVK's resume is so extensive. Hayley, I'd love to share with listeners a little bit, like what got you, like what piques your interest with source pages, and then we'll get into our own type of source pages, like dig into this Jason Aaron story. What's your origin story with comics, books, movies, things like this?
Yeah, I've always been a big reader. I loved reading and writing growing up, but I have really fallen off of it in my most recent adult years. And in 2020, when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended, I was at home a lot, still working from home, and I was craving more Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. content because I was sad the show ended. So I downloaded Marvel Unlimited and started reading comics, and then kind of took a break again. But when Brian and I became friends, he was like, do you want to do this? Like, we can use this app. And I'm like, oh, I have that app. Like, I can totally do this with you, And so I love that it's gotten me back into reading, and we're even going to dip into some Tolkien stuff with the Lord of the Rings of Power show coming up. Good. Reading just little snippets, not getting super into.
Oh, you mean you're not going to do a full Silmarillion breakdown?
Not
like
a full
one episode?
No, especially because that's not. I mean, we thought about doing like the Anna Lindley as sort of just like here's how their universe was created, because the thing that's cool that I love about the show that's coming on is that there is the least amount of extra stuff out there written about this part of the Second Age.
Yeah.
Again, I gave Hayley, I got a new like triple edition hardbound all of Tolkien's collected stuff. So I had all the old stuff. So I gave it to Hayley to give to her husband. And he started reading all because there's like 12 books of the histories and just all the anecdotes and the appendices, because the stuff with Tolkien, the stuff that we've seen in the 6 movies, it's probably maybe about 2% of what's out there. There's so much lore. And it just is like, the Silmarillion is great, but it's not prose. It's more like a textbook.
Yes.
So it tells you stuff. So it's very hard it would take a lot of interpretation of the writer and director of what they actually want to do to make it into something that's that's more than just like a textbook type feel to it.
It's not exactly a very it's not a fast read.
No, especially like at the beginning when they're still naming all like the Ainur and stuff like that, and it's 5 pages of just how they're all connected to each other. It's like it could get kind of boring, but that's the kind of stuff I love. I love reading stuff like that and then making charts and like doing the lines, being like, so this falls under here, and this is actually Gandalf, but he has 3 other names. And so this is what these guys call him. And then, it sort of doesn't get quite as bad as that like gif that they have of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got the board with the strings and everything like that. But I do that sometimes where I'll get deeply invested in something and be like, oh my God, this is great. So.
And this is where Brian and I, we balance so well on the podcast, I think, because I always say Brian does the heavy lifting and I do the highlights.
And then you're like, rein it in, buddy. Like, come on. Well, and I'm honestly, I'm glad that your show exists, because one of the reasons why this show exists is to dig into source material. And I've wanted to get your guys' voice and unique opinion on how you break down stuff with part of what I'm doing this year on this Thor show, where I'm breaking down a whole run that's going to be instrumental in the upcoming Love and Thunder Thor film. So before, again, we've kind of preambled a little bit here, but I want to know kind of like your guys' history with Thor as a character. Is it largely from movies or maybe comics? But before we dig in here, like, where are you guys coming from in terms of Thor as a character?
Thor Love and Thunder is the movie I'm most looking forward to this year. So
yes,
he's a character I really love in the MCU, but the MCU is mostly,
not a bad place to start.
The MCU is mostly where I know him from. So I mean, Chris Hemsworth, he's the embodiment of Thor. Like, you can't get any better than that, right? I don't know what we'll do if
he's pretty perfect. If
and when we lose him, right? And so these are really the first Thor-centric comics we've read so far. So awesome. It was and they're pretty interesting, pretty funny to get into, but I think it was a perfect we meet a lot of Thors in these runs too.
Yes, so we certainly
do.
A
good introduction to him.
What about you, Brian?
He was always one of those characters, which is kind of funny, is I started reading Marvel comics back like in probably like 82, 83.
Okay.
And there was a couple titles that I never really ever got into, and it was the Iron Man titles and the Thor titles. I don't know why. I liked when they showed up in things like the original Secret Wars, and actually the most recent Secret Wars with the Thor Corps was just phenomenal. I love that. That was my great.
Language, man.
But other than that, it was always just like, I never got that deep into any of the characters and stuff like that, because the funny thing is reading this stuff now is like, it does have a lot of the Tolkien type feel to it with the dark elves and the elves and the trolls and but it was just like, it never, I separated in my mind that it wasn't Tolkien. So it wasn't something I, sought out, because it was just like Thor was always, I don't know. I think if I said that it was more of a generic title in my mind, might be a little bit a huge disservice. I never had anything against it. It just wasn't one of those things that was ever on my pull list when I was reading comics and getting them from Unicorn Comics here in town. But I would always see them and be like, oh, I always loved the art. And I had read some of the stuff about how Aaron, Jason Aaron was just like the seminal guy that was his Thor stuff is just like, and especially with the way that this ends, I wanted to ask, is like the end of the 25th issue, does this tie into Original Sin?
Yes, it actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've actually done a whole breakdown of Original Sin earlier on the show. We kind of did it out of order. But Original Sin is where it's that transition point between Thor Odinson being worthy of the hammer, and then eventually Jane Foster becoming worthy of the hammer, which is, again, going to be a big part of the Thor Love and Thunder film. So yeah, this is it transitions really well to that next level in Jason Aaron's run on Thor. But thank you guys for sharing that. I really love the two very different perspectives of the character, and I hope that it really helps, you know, our listeners, whether they're a new enjoyer of Thor stories, maybe from the MCU like Hayley, or if you've been, you know, avoiding reading his comics since the 80s, you know, hopefully this Jason Aaron series can really capture everyone's imagination for the upcoming Thor film. I wanted to just give a little bit of a synopsis of the issues we're going to cover on today's episode, and then Brian and Hayley are actually going to come back on the next part of our retrospective and talk about the fourth volume of Jason Aaron's run. But today we're going to talk about the third one. This is entitled The Accursed, and the synopsis for this volume goes something like this. It is the bloody return of Malekith the Accursed. The former Lord of the Dark Elves escapes his otherworldly prison, and the chase is on across the 9 realms to capture him. Thor finds new allies to join his wild hunt. A dark elf sorceress, a gun-toting light elf, a gargantuan mountain giant, a dwarf who loves dynamite, and a particularly surly troll. But when one teammate falls, will it end in war for the 9 realms? As a traitor within the group strikes, Thor prepares to take drastic measures. Malekith stages his final bloody raid on Earth. Plus, what does it mean for Earth for a god to walk on Earth? What does Thor do when he's not saving the world with the Avengers? It is the return also of Thor's longtime love interest, Jane Foster. So there's a lot in these issues we're going to cover today. If you're following along on the Thor God of Thunder series on maybe Marvel Unlimited, or if you have interest in getting this as a collected edition, these are issues 12 through 18 of Jason Aaron's Thor God of Thunder series. So with that synopsis out of the way, Brian and Hayley, I just wanted to ask you guys, like, first impressions of this story. There's a lot here, but I'd love to hear the things that jumped out to you, and maybe we can pull at those threads and give our listeners a little bit of a preview of this story so that maybe they can go check it out for themselves.
I thought it felt like the perfect action adventure movie plot, like danger, team up, betrayal, you know, and then everybody finds their place at the end. It felt very like, I don't know, Saturday morning cartoons, but in a great way.
Ooh. Yeah, I like that. Did you have like a favorite? Was there like a favorite moment within the story for you, Hayley, that was like, oh man, like this is a really good part? And because, like you said, you hadn't read a lot of Thor comics going into this, so I'm very curious to get your perspective as a relatively new reader of Thor comics.
I think I like the part the best where the League is together and they're arguing about, you know, they're doing the classic, we can't get along, nothing's working, we're not communicating. And then when they flip it at the end and they become a team and everybody's friends, and just them saying that even though all of their races and breeds were, you know, born to hate each other, they are now this little central group that will forever be bound by friendship and by battle. And I don't know, it's cheesy, but I really liked that part.
Is my favorite scene in this first story arc we're going to talk about tonight. Like, there's so many great lines. I don't know if you guys had favorite lines from these issues, but a few of mine are when the dwarf says, I know I sent this to you guys in the group chat, but it's one of my favorite little lines where he says that all of his dynamite got taken away, so he had to improvise and kill one of the dark elves with a candy cane.
Yeah, that was funny.
Of all the things, a candy cane, seriously?
That's a sturdy candy cane.
Right, and you see it like at the bottom of the little panel there. That actually brings up a good point. We'll come back to the League of Realms, which is Thor's little squad here that the Congress of all the 9 realms has put together to track down Malekith. But Brian, what were some of your like things that jumped out to you from this cursed storyline?
I thought the character of Malekith was really well written too, because he came across as being just like that typical bad guy leader who's sort of like every time they seem to have a reason to, he's like, oh no, I'm not doing it like that. Like he's got that mentality of I'm not doing the wrong thing for the right reason. I'm just doing it for our people. Because, even when they said it's like, well, you're killing your own people. Well, yeah, because they don't want me anymore. So,
yeah,
I was gone. And although I thought that was kind of funny, that beginning part when they did their mission to get him out of hell, where it was like a Mission Impossible thing. And they're like, we can only take this. The Valkyries it'll only be for a second. And I'm like, you guys have been there for about 20 minutes, I think. And what do you do? Guys. It's been a while. And then they're just like, I'm thinking, okay, if this is their most like evil prisoner there, seemed kind of easy, but it's like, it's plot devices and stuff like that. But
exactly.
Just like you're saying, the dysfunction they had in the group. Even I think my favorite moment too was when they realized that Thor didn't kill the troll and he comes back. And they're like,
yes,
because I didn't even think that he didn't do that, because they're like, we just found him wandering around, and that it was just like, because there was a bunch of twists too. That's the thing I like too, when Thor was all just like, you're the traitor, you're the traitor, you're the traitor. And it was just like, oh, Thor's the traitor because he's got this worm thing that he, Malekith's, what did he like stick it in his meat one
bugged.
time? Yeah, he literally got bugged.
Style.
Yeah.
Like Brian alluded to, there's a lot of twists and turns in this story. So what ends up happening, so just listeners, so there's a lot in this story, and I would encourage you to go read it for yourself. But just kind of a bird's eye view of what happens in this story is Malekith starts going throughout the 9 realms, killing dark elves everywhere, killing his own people, because he views his own race as becoming weak in his absence, and he's disgusted by it, and he wants to be that strong leader once more. And of course, Thor and the gods of Asgard can't let this happen, so they start trying to track him down, and they send this League of Realms to go track down Malekith. But Malekith is always one step ahead, and they can't figure out why. They think there's a traitor in their midst, and at one point, like Brian referenced, Thor is seen to, what we believe, kill a member of the League of Realms. And I thought that was kind of nuts, because from even what we know about Thor, it's like, that seems a little drastic and a little hardcore. Did you guys get that feeling when you were reading, like, oh no, maybe he's gone too far?
He seemed like, in this one, I was thinking, well, he must be like Thor at the beginning of the first Thor movie, where he's very headstrong and reckless. And so I kind of bought in. I mean, I totally bought into it. I was like, I thought it was over the top.
Yeah,
but I totally bought into it.
A little much.
Yeah, that's this feeling I get from Thor, and a lot of this run is the Aaron run, is that he is very bullheaded in a sense. Yes. When it comes to a lot of the stuff, because at first, the way that it starts off is that it is showing him almost more like the What If Thor, where he's just partying and drinking and just being that party Thor type of character. And then his mom steps in and sort of is just like, we've got this problem here now. And one of the things that we glance over, part of their party too, is this female dark elf that at the beginning, Malekith has her sort of like in a hostage situation, and he just like rips her arm off. And so
it's hardcore. Yeah.
And they thought it was her sometimes too, as being the plant, where it's just like, well, you seemed a little too cozy, and, it's just, oh, you just had to sacrifice your arm to, just squash this whole thing. So there was a lot of the argument. I did really enjoy the light elf that was the cowboy, that he just had the friggin' 6-shooters and the hat. And it was just like, that was just ridiculous, but it was so fun.
He may have the best name. His name is Sir Ivory Honeyshot.
Yeah.
Like, I need him to show up in his own comic right now. Like, he was so like, he's kind of like a Three Musketeer, but also like a cowboy gunslinger. It was so great.
Because he had the duster, but everything was like that really like dirty white beige like cream color. So he was very like, it's like he was exemplifying the the white, how it's like the bad guys wear the black hats and the good guys wear the white hats, but he was just like almost too like pretty looking with the
very much like the Three Musketeers is a good comparison. Is it Athos or Aramis that he's more like? I don't know, but it's one of them. And yeah, that I don't
even know the names of the Three Musketeers, so you already got me beat there.
Athos, Aramis, and
the League of Realms, which I'm kind of glad you guys have joined us for this, because the League of Realms was something even I was unaware of, before this. This is actually their first appearance. This is the first time they show up in Thor comics, and it involves a lot of characters that, like we mentioned with Sir Ivory Honeyshot. I will never get tired of saying that. This is the first appearance of all of these characters. And
nice.
So the League of Realms, for those of you listening, is a collection of representatives from all around the 9 realms, and they're all banded together to stop Malekith from extinguishing the Dark Elves. And because it's a comic book, they originally they don't get along, and that's where Hayley referenced the issue where they all go to the bar in Alfheim, and they have I've got the page open on my iPad. It makes me laugh just looking at it, because they have that opposites attract kind of bonding experience. But the League of Realms consists of Sir Ivory Honeyshot, who we've mentioned already, the dwarf Screwbeard, who loves dynamite. We have the mountain troll Augie, who he does not speak. He's not so much with the words. And Ud the troll. He is very trollish. He doesn't like the gods at all. He's instantly skeptical of everybody else. And I'm going to try and get her name right. But the dark elf that Brian alluded to, Lady Waziria, she is the representative from the dark elves. And she instantly has everybody, on edge, because she is part of the same race and group as the person they're trying to track down. And she's immediately singled out as, a traitor candidate. But of the 5 members of the League of Realms, like who jumped out to you? We've already kind of talked about Sir Ivory Honeyshot several times, but like who else jumped out to you, and maybe why did these brand new characters resonate with you?
Screwbeard is forever cemented in my mind because his hand got chopped off.
Oh my gosh, yes, his hand get chopped. Oh my god.
That was a funny scene too, because he had the dynamite in his hand, and the one elf like pinned the hand, and they're just like, get his hand free. And I think it was Og just came and went and chopped his hand off instead. Like, there you go.
And then you still have to run away because the dynamite's still in the hand.
Yeah, because they were like, we're gonna try to defuse the thing. I was like, nope, easiest situation, just cut it off. Okay. Next.
Hey, it's not a perfect partnership, but it worked.
No. To his credit, he was pretty kind to him afterwards. I would have been really upset.
Yeah. And he spoke like in a really broken, it was very broken English, and sort of like almost like maybe like a 3 or 4 year old would speak, where it's a lot of just like missing words and stuff like that. But you get the point of what he just did, like blowing things up and didn't trust. Like he always, I think at the one point when they were jumping back and forth between who they were thinking was the traitor, whoever was sort of getting the most suspicion thrown at him, he was just like, yeah, that guy. It's like, oh no, it's that guy. So I was like,
he's a little simple, but we like him.
Yeah.
He's a little simple, but we like him. Oh my goodness, that's a perfect description of Mr. Screwbeard. The tension between the group of who's the traitor, that comes to its pinnacle when you find out that Thor got bugged and he was actually the traitor, and you think that Malekith has gotten one over on them, and then you realize that Thor actually got one over on Malekith, who thought that he had gotten like this whole kind of
Chess match.
Yeah, exactly. It's a chess match towards the end, and it ends with a fight between the League and the Dark Elves that are loyal to Malekith. And Thor tries to do this thing where he tries to appeal to the Dark Elves to appoint a king that can unify them, a king or a queen that can actually unify them. And then Thor and Malekith fight, and then we get a kind of another, a curveball on top of a curveball towards the end, where the Dark Elves stop the fight and they say, "We've decided who we want to be our king, and it's Malekith."
Mhm.
So, as you're reading this, you've invested 5 issues in this story already. When it gets to that end, like what was your thoughts on them being like, "Oh, okay, that's different." That, I guess, that was the reaction I had. What did you guys think about that conclusion? I guess because Thor is not a fan of it, and I'm just curious as to what you guys.
Oh
thought.
no, he did not like that at all, and he was just screaming because even at that time, because at this time, what is exactly Freya's role? She is in charge she's basically like the lady that's in charge of like the not she's is she acting queen or
She's mother, isn't she?
Yeah. So
okay.
At this point in Thor comics, there the kingdom of Asgard is ruled by a triumvirate group, the All Mothers, and she's kind of the head mother of the little council there, so she calls the shots.
Mother Superior.
What was it? What did we didn't we read a comic run that had her in it with that role? Was that in Original Sin?
Probably, because
I remember
Original Sin, and there's like that little side alley story that is connected to this.
The 10th Realm.
Yeah.
Because we did actually we covered Original Sin as our Uatu the Watcher primer, just to get him, because it started off with and that actually is our most list. I think that's our biggest, like our number 1 episode of downloading ever so now. But
give Batman some time.
It'll probably get there. But when he was just he had the same thought I had, was just like, well, he escaped prison, he's got to go back.
Exactly.
And then Freya's just like, well, no, we could kind of commute his sentence. Also, if he has a proxy, maybe. And then Lady W, whatever her name is
Waziria,
like, I'll do it. And then they're like, okay, this ties it up in a bow. And it's like, so he's in charge now? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I read that she was going to be his proxy, I was like, oh, he's going to go back to prison and she'll rule in his stead. And then I read it again. I was like, no, she's going to prison for him. This sucks.
This sucks.
She lost an arm and is taking this place in prison.
Yeah.
Well, and even
it's a win-win.
I don't know if you call it logic, maybe insanity, where she's like, hey, if they all agree and they're in agreement, then that at least we're not fighting each other. And it's like, yeah, but he's a genocidal maniac.
Right. I think it's another thing that probably got them to agree on him, is that they were just scared to death of him, and they're just like, all right, he'll unite us because he'll unite us all under a fear umbrella. Yeah. Just like,
at least we'll all be scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you've got Thor and all those other people being like, okay, we're going to figure out a way to just not have this keep going. So
I mean, it was very real politics, really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting I guess I never thought about that, the politics of nine realms of very powerful beings. And Malekith has a clear path where he's like, no, everyone's weaker than me and I'm stronger, that's why I should rule. And I mean, whether it's a righteous motivation or not, at least it's clear. He has a very distinct view of everybody else, and that down the road in Jason Aaron's run, all of this ends with a story called The War of the Realms, which was alluded in the issues that we read, and Malekith is the central figure in that whole conflict that ends the whole thing. So Malekith has a clear motivation the whole way through, and it's just nuts that he gets to be king at the end of this. It's a little off-putting.
It's sort of like getting the the loser of a war, just like, all right, here you go, you can keep your land and everything's all good, and be like, sorry, really? But
it's
then
also
again,
like,
it's good storytelling.
yeah, and they
Yeah.
were, while they were fighting, especially on Jotunheim, there were places they couldn't enter because they weren't allowed to, because that would start another war. And so
Yeah.
they really did bring in real world politics, where you get a leader in place that the rest of the world knows isn't good, but there's no real reason why you can't let them be in place because the country has allowed it or voted on it or whatever, however it's happened, maybe by force, but
Right. I think Jason Aaron did that good in both of these stories, is where he used a simple mechanism of, we know you're powerful, we know you can do this, but here's the reason why we're not going to allow you to do it, because it's going to affect other. Because there's another thing in the next run too, where it was just like something as simple as the act they did to Thor caused him to be like, well, crap, my hands are tied now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, again, political machinations make it to where if you're smart, you're not going to, yes, they could have went and destroyed and done whatever, but now you're going to have another problem with this conflict with, pissing off the frost giants or getting more people involved, where it's just like, you don't want to do that. So it's sort of like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of Thor. So
on how do you hogtie a god?
yeah.
Well,
Slap him with some politics.
it's nuts. Thor runs into more red tape in this stint of comics than anything I've ever read.
No, I was alluding to the thing that happens in the next one, because that was one of those things too, when we were talking earlier and I mentioned it, and I'm just like, wow, okay. It made for great storytelling.
Yeah. Yes.
It's sort of just like, oh, okay.
Way to slap a god with a no trespassing sign.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, you can't do this. Why? Okay.
Because we have a piece of paper that says
yes.
so.
We'll sue your people into oblivion. I don't know.
Yeah. You're not going to do this because think about all the paperwork and red tape you're going to have after the fact.
Legal fees.
Yes. It's going to be tied up in court forever.
I do love alluding to our next part in this retrospective. I do love who shows up as Thor's lawyer, though.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That made me very happy because I love that character so much. I wanted to
very timely too. So
very timely, very, very timely. I did want to highlight a conversation towards the end of the Accursed storyline after Malekith basically gets off scot-free. And I found it interesting that his coronation happens right there in front of Thor, and it's a crown of thorns. And Jason Aaron he loves throwing spiritual or religious imagery into his stories, and I thought that was a very like, oh, this is kind of sick and twisted.
It's got a double meaning to it.
Yeah. But after that, Thor and Ivory sit and have a conversation on the balcony that I thought was just maybe worth a little bit of a deeper exposition for us, where Ivory says these dark elves, one could go quite mad trying to understand their ways. Thor says, oh, I understand them quite clearly. They have played me for a fool. Ivory says, you saved lives, Thunder God. Do not doubt that. You ended the bloodshed. Thor says, I am the god who saved the elves and doomed all else. With Malekith as king, whatever peace we have won will be short-lived, and I assure you no world will be safe, least of all Asgard. Ivory says, perhaps, but if trouble comes again, you know the League will be with you to face it. You forged a brotherhood between beings who were raised all their lives to despise one another. Do not discount that. If there is everlasting peace made between the realms, they may say that it began with us, with you. Thor ends with, and once war comes, where will they say that began? So there's a theme here throughout this volume that I just wanted to get your guys' opinions and insights on. This theme of unity, where The League of Realms is very, very different people, historically opposed people who are brought together for a common goal. And Ivory at least thinks in this moment that they could be the symbol that provides unity for all the 9 realms. And Malekith was interested in uniformity. He wanted everybody to get in line so that he could call the shots. And, maybe drawing on real world examples, but at times, like, people love, disunity. And over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk of like, let's just get unified. And I found this story very, I don't know, timely. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like this theme of unity coming out here. Did you guys see that? Did you have any maybe insights about that towards the end of this story?
I think it focused on the fact that it was going to be kind of like a troubled and very fragile, like partnership between everybody, because again, it was based off of the fact that they were all together to try to stop something, which they stopped the end result from happening, but they didn't. Basically, it was almost like they stopped the cancer, but they didn't cut it out. So
okay.
he's still in place. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of peace when the main part is still out there. The piece is still on the board. Malekith might just be like, oh, I'm doing this for the good. No, he just is an agent of chaos pretty much. He just wants to have his way. And it's going to get to the point where, and again, I'm not going to try to bring this into like real world politics that we're dealing with right now. Yeah. If they have a vision they want to do, no matter what everyone else says, they're going to do it. And so with Malekith being still there, that fragile alliance is not going to, it could end up causing, I think it will end up causing more harm down the road because you didn't take the main player off the board.
Yeah.
For now, it's sort of just like, okay, it's
like a timeout.
It's pretty much, it's like a timeout. It's like a pausing of the action. But, if you get rid of all the things, you never want to see a movie where it's, the Avengers sitting around cleaning the base for 2 hours, because that's not an action. That's not interesting. Some people might like it, but for the most part, they'll be like, what are we watching here for? So yeah, you have to keep something interesting on the board for them to be able to write about.
I can't believe we're watching this.
Yeah. Like, really?
I would probably watch that.
Yeah. In context, okay, think about the end of the Avengers when they're sitting around eating shawarma. But that was brought up as like you guys want to get shawarma afterwards? It was sort of brought up as a thing, but otherwise it's just like, you got to have something that's behind. I mean, unless it's just like, okay, you got to have a whole episode of, the Avengers TV show with who put the coffee grounds in the sink type thing.
Oh, that's a Hulk thing, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I just ask because so often comics can be a form of escape, but they can also inform, real world things. So that was just one of those things I thought, the 9 realms of Asgard and the world tree they're so different. And finally, the League of Realms is shown as an example of like, oh, this is what we could be. This is, for so many millennia, we have fought each other. And the League of Realms, like, oh, it's aspirational. Like, that's what we could be. So I just thought it was a good example, maybe worth some further detail. So, did you guys have any other? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say the League of Realms was a thing that seems like it was born out of necessity for a cause for them to, stop Malekith and like that. Yeah. But if they end up not having a clear-cut mission, it could end up being like, well, call me when something needs to be done, which happens a lot of times. It's just like, otherwise it's like, no, you want to keep the peace. You don't want to, bring it back when it starts crumbling. You just end up keep building bridges to do what needs to have that same result. If you're complacent, sometimes complacency works great because it's nothing's happening.
Yeah.
As far as them internally, we don't have to see it or read about it. But if that piece is kept, it's sort of like then the end result is, or the ends justify the means then on it, because they let Malekith back in. It sort of quelled everything. And if it stays that way, Okay, good. But they can't go after, if it's going for 100 years, nothing happens. And they're just like, well, I guess we don't need to have this league anymore. And
Exactly.
then they start falling apart. And that's when Malekith the whole time, it's like, it's a long game. Boom. And then he comes back and they're just like, oh, we're not prepared for this. So,
because I have a feeling from the prison scene we get earlier in this story, Malekith, he's willing to wait. He's willing to wait for the right time.
Right.
So as we kind of end the conversation on this volume, the Accursed story, where Malekith is thwarted again by the League of Realms along with Thor. It kind of is the opening volley in Malekith's war on the Nine Realms. That is the culmination of Jason Aaron's run. But I wanted to hear just any final thoughts you guys had on this arc, and what your takeaways from this story specifically were.
Well, I have to call out the very first issue where Thor does talk to Jane.
Oh,
and it's the only time we see her in this particular volume.
Yes.
And he's just finding out she has cancer, and they have a lot of really poignant conversations. But my favorite, of course, is her comment after he calls her a brave woman because she's, refusing any kind of cosmic treatment he might be able to come up with. And she says, nope, just a regular woman. This is what women do. And I thought that was awesome.
Oh my goodness. I love Jane so much. She is, and this is really I'm glad you highlighted that, Hayley, because I almost forgot about that little one-shot issue where nothing really happens per se to do with Malekith, but Jane is set up as a figure who's like, she's going through something that's intense and arduous, and she's choosing to do it the Midgard way. And of course, we know, if you know anything about the context of Jason Aaron's Thor, you know what's coming. But at the time, like when these issues were coming out, we had no idea what she would become. And I'll show you guys this because I show everybody this when they come on the show, but this eventually happens.
That's so cool.
This is one of my prized comic possessions, because I think Jane is such a great picture of strength, and going above and beyond. But that is an awesome scene where they're just talking on the porch at her house.
And her boyfriend's not digging it very much either. It's like how am I going to compete?
Then he flies her to the moon, a la Frank Sinatra, and how can you compete with that?
Yeah.
Oh man, Thor's such a show off, and he knows it.
He comes by it naturally.
I love in the second part that we're going to talk about, where he's like, Jane talks about her current status with Walter, and Thor refers to him as like, Walter, seller of real estate.
Seller of real estate, yeah.
So funny.
Brian, was there any final thoughts for you? And then we'll wrap up part 3 of the retrospective.
I did enjoy overall the tone of the story had a lot more humor in it too. It always is great to lace, and that's what I like telling people about. Even like the MCU, you got something that is very serious. This whole, if you look at it, even like the name of it, The Accursed, and what the story is, you still got to be able to throw in lighthearted enough moments, even just the interplay between the people in the league and stuff like that. And they do that well with the movies too. So it's not just always like, I'm not going to bash on DC, but a lot of times their movies can be very stoic and dour and don't even have lightheartedness. This one did have a lot of times where I was actually chuckling and being like, oh God, that's, again,
yes.
Even what happens in the second one, it's just like, you got to be able to have that levity between the things to make it interesting overall. So it keeps your interest in it. And Jason Aaron, I've liked him in a lot of other stuff he's done. Didn't he do a bunch of Doctor Strange stuff too?
He did.
Yeah. So I think that's where I know a lot of him from, is him writing with Doctor Strange as well. So
he did an excellent story that listeners, if you're gonna be checking out Doctor Strange stuff for the Multiverse of Madness, a great story of Jason Aaron's with that is The Way of the Weird, where Jason Aaron digs into what does magic cost. because for so long in Doctor Strange's history, magic didn't really cost anything. And you find out like what the true price you have to pay to be the Sorcerer Supreme is. So that's a great Jason Aaron issue that I would highly recommend. But
yeah, he's a good writer to have in their stable.
well, that is going to do it for part 3 of our Jason Aaron retrospective. I want to thank Hayley and Brian for stopping by. They're going to be back for part 4 in a few weeks, where we're going to dig into the last days of Midgard. It's going to be a great story. Galactus is going to show up. There's going to be a Minotaur. My favorite Thor villain, Ulick the Troll, is going to show up. So there's a lot to look forward to in part 4, and we'll see you when we get there. That is going to do it for the episode today, everybody. We hope you enjoyed part 3 of our Jason Aaron retrospective with Brian and Hayley from Source Pages. Be sure to go check them out. Enjoy the work they do over at Source Pages, getting people ready to go see the movies and enjoy the TV shows that various companies have coming out around comic book characters, sci-fi characters, fantasy characters, really just anything in the world of nerd film and shows. They'll get you ready for. They do a great job over there. So go check out Source Pages and enjoy the work that they are doing. Before we leave today, I just want to remind you to be watching our social media this week for that announcement. We are going to be expanding the podcast in some really cool, I believe, innovative ways, and I think you're going to enjoy that announcement. Those of you that follow the show and just want more of the style of content that we are producing here on the show, everything's about to get a lot bigger, everybody. So we hope that you are along the ride with us on this new aspect, this new, this new part of our journey. Until we see you aboard the Bifrost next time, everybody, I encourage you to stay worthy.